against great king, beat his chest with great force, pulled his hair and beard, and scratched his face. Said the 16th century scholar Marin Bar-Ledi, in his The Story of the Life and Activities of the High Skanderbegi of Epirotaru. Peter Budi was a prominent Albanian and Catholic bishop. In his Rituali Roman, from 1621, he writes about the Jama and calls these lamentations and cries of a pagan nature, and the ugliest on this earth. He emphasizes, however, that wailings and calamities made with great shocks were practiced in Illyrian antiquity, well evidenced in the Dardanians, as well as in Thrace, Greece and Rome. They are of Paleo-Balkan, Mediterranean and Middle Eastern origin. In 1641, Bishop Frang Bardi gives in detail, when describing Albanian customs, of the grief of men in the mourning of women when writing. The men would tear their clothes, beat their breasts, cut the beard and not shave as a sign of great sadness, and would even scratch their faces with their nails until bursts of blood would flow. In 1937, German anthropologist Dr. Reimer Schultz took part in a German-Italian expedition to the northern Albanian mountains of Dukagjini. During a long stay in the village of Theth, he assembled over 200 photographs of school children, attended a funeral, took photos of it and wrote a vivid description of the event in his journal. About 200 meters away from the rest stood 12 men. They were standing in two lines, brow to brow. Their leader was in the middle. He bent his knees slightly, took a deep breath and began the tribal lamentation, emitting loud sighs of "Woe, my wretched brother." The words were repeated over and over, each time louder and with greater vehemence, and was accompanied by gestures. The men beat their breasts and rubbed at their temples. Then they held their noses and moaned. The group took several steps towards the body and repeated the lament and gestures in the same sequence. Step by step they approached the deceased until they stood in a semicircle around him. Once again, they began lamenting and fell to their knees, leaning forwards. They held themselves up with one hand on the ground and placed the other at their sides. The cries were repeated, louder and louder. The brother of the dead man then came forth and placed his hand on the backs of the moaning men, to tell them that it was enough. The men fell silent and rose to their feet. The lamentation of the Highlanders, the primarily Dinaric inhabitants of the northern Albanian Alps, is a moving ceremony evincing tribal solidarity among simple peasants and shepherds. All the relatives bring forth their lament and do so as part of a cult tradition. Solemn and earnest, they reveal devotion and fervor, yet show no sign of ecstasy or demonic frenzy. The lamentation is the way the tribe honors its dead. It is not a fraternity of men or a secret society that is acting here. It is the entire tribe that is openly paying farewell to one of its members. After the demise of Troy, Aeneas the Dardanite, the son of the Trojan prince Anchises, and nephew to King Priam, was one of the few Trojans who were not killed or enslaved after Troy fell. He is also known as the prince that carried his father Anchises out of burning Troy, and together with his followers they headed westbound. His voyage is described by Publius Vergilius in the Aeneid, saying that Aeneas set sail with 22 ships and had about 3,400 followers. According to other ancient sources, his descendants helped establish the Roman Empire, but not only that, for one of his grandsons, Brutus, immigrated to Albion. There, he founded New Troy, or present-time London in Britain. This history is provided in two of the most important books written in the Middle Ages by the Britons and about their country. The books are Historia Britanum, written by Nennius, author of the 8th century, and Historia Regum Britanniae, written around 1136 by Geoffrey of Monmouth. Antenor, a counselor to King Priam, was the son of the Dardanian noble Asiates and Cleomestra. Dares of Phrygia, who was one of his followers, said that Antenor had 2,500 followers and managed to escape the Achaeans. According to the Latin author Titius Livius, when describing in his History of Rome, he writes, Antenor is said to have come to the uppermost gulf of the Adriatic Sea, together with a group of Eneti, who had been driven from Paphlagonia by revolution. They had lost their king, Polymenus, and were seeking a home in a leader. Driving out the Eugenae, who lived between the sea and the Alps, the Trojans and Eneti took possession of this territory. The place they first landed is named Troy, and so the district is called Troyan. The entire people are known as Veneti. Present-time Verona, Italy. According to the medieval Frankish chronicler, Victor Rydberg, provides that the Franks are descendants of Antenor. In his Teutonic mythology, he mentions that the name Teuton was oftentimes used to refer to Germanic tribes, and that they were of Trojan origin. After the War of Troy, Pero Neoptolemus, son of Achilles, set sail for Phthia, or Phthia as it is called in Albanian, where he had acquired the kingdom from his grandfather Peleus. Upon arriving, he stopped and burned his ships by the advice of his captive, Helenus, the prophetic son of Priam. They marched inland until they came to the lake Pambatus in Epirus. There, he battled and laid waste of the inhabitants, and where he founded the city Molossia. Neoptolemus, who was on friendly terms with Helenus, because he had revealed the means by which Troy could be taken, gave his mother Didamia to be his wife. There, he fell in love and married Andromache, Hector's wife, whom she had baby Molossus with. He was also married to Hermione, whom he had previously been betrothed to back in Troy. Bitterly complaining about her poor treatment, and how Neoptolemus preferred a captive woman over her, Hermione urged her father Menelaus to kill Hector's son, Laomedon. Having learned of this plot, Andromache saved her son and escaped with the aid of the people, who pitied her fate. Meanwhile Orestes, son of Agamemnon, who hated Neoptolemus for having married Hermione, for she had been promised to him, urged his uncle Menelaus to carry out a plot and kill Neoptolemus. However, Menelaus returned to Sparta, for he wanted no part in such a crime. Within a short time, the popular story goes that Neoptolemus had been treacherously slain by Orestes. After Thetis, Achilles' mother, had seen that Hermione and Orestes were married, she sent Andromache off to Helenus, because Andromache was pregnant, and that Thetis feared Orestes and Hermione might try to kill the baby. By the death of Neoptolemus, a portion of the realm passed to Helenus, whom later married Andromache, and called the plains where they lived as Chaonia, after Chaon of Troy. In the Aeneid, Virgil wrote that Aeneas Dardanidi went to Buthrotum, present-day Butrint in Albania, and met Helenus and Andromache, where they reigned together in Buthrotum. Helenus and Hector's son Laodamas were all that was left from the royal family of Troy,